and welcome to another episode of Untold. Today we have a special episode where we get to raise awareness for children with autism, which I think is a very important subject. I'm your host, Fajer Almenaie.
And I'm your host, Abdullah Al-Hindiani, and like Lujain said, we have Fajer Almenaie, who's a behavior analyst and autism expert. She's going to be talking to us all about how to deal with children with autism and how their parents are treating them and helping them. Well, for that, we are going to take a break, so you come back and join her. And we are back from the break, so welcome, but most importantly, welcome Fajer Almenaie for being today's guest on The Untold.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I thought we could first begin to know, because I know that you help children with autism, is that correct? And you're a behavior analyst?
Right.
So what inspired you to go into this career path?
So I've always been interested in working with children. I actually got my bachelor's degree in speech and language pathology and communication disorders. And through that, I got to dive deeper into psychology and different needs. And I really resonated a lot with the behavioral sciences field. And so I decided to pursue my master's degree after that in applied behavior analysis.
Oh, mashallah. So talk us through your profession. Like, what is a regular session looks like, dealing with a behavior kind of patient?
So there is no such thing as a typical session. I think that's the most fun part about the job, is that you never know what you're going to expect when you start a session. Typically, we like to build relationships and rapport with children. We obviously have preset goals that we want to work on, but a lot of the time it's also making sure that the child is happy, relaxed, engaged, and that's when kids learn the most. So we walk through the session, we are able to complete all of our goals and the learning that takes place, and then we have a few minutes where we talk to the parents, give them an update about the session, and that's pretty much on repeat when it comes to our sessions.
So do you enjoy working with children? What are the rewards or challenges that come with this situation?
Yeah. Definitely, kids are a lot of fun. It keeps you energized. You're always on your toes. You learn to have incredible reflexes. So, and you never know what to expect. Every child is different, and I'm sure every human is different in that sense. There's always challenges in everything that we do. I think the largest challenge is, external influences that could take place. I think that would be one of our biggest challenges when it comes to society or environmental challenges that we aren't able to control. Sometimes that becomes a challenge in our session as well.
Well, I agree that children are very special. I actually did my master's in children's literature, so there is some child psychology that goes into it, because the way that children perceive the world is kind of different than we perceive it, and the way that they understand behaviors and different things, it's like a whole new world almost.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool that you decided to go into this field in a more behavioral way to help them, especially if they have issues.
Yeah, so I think, in speaking about issues with a lot of kids, like when you're dealing with these kids, like how do you usually approach the session? Like how do you first get into the diagnosis? Like do you talk to parents to look out for signs of their children? Do you talk to the children themselves? Like how do you start all these sessions?
Yeah. So we always start with a parent report. So I personally don't diagnose. I always say I'm in the service of treating, not diagnosing. I think that comes as well with a lot of stigma around the diagnosis. That I had a conversation once with a parent who said that she was never able to actually go back to the therapist that diagnosed her child to receive sessions, because that was the person that kind of broke her heart, and she had so many dreams that she built for her child, and this person gave a diagnosis and kind of shattered that, and they were never able to recover from it. And so that really hit deep. I really enjoy the treatment. I really enjoy being the face of light for people. So through our sessions, we just learn and understand and do a lot of listening and psychoeducation about what are the symptoms, what are the behavioral things that they're experiencing, the signs. We do a lot of psychoeducation as well. And then there's obviously a component where we're sitting with the child, observing them, really understanding as well, what's their comfort zone. And we assess throughout a later period, and it takes multiple days, because when you're a stranger and you're asking this child questions. They don't know who you are. They're like, why are you asking me this? So they might not respond. So our first session is always just a, what we call like a baseline pairing session, where we just get to know the child and observe in that sense.
So, what early signs can a parent look for to see if their child might have autism or any other issues? Like, before they come for assessment, what should they look out for?
So signs are actually present from as young as, a couple of weeks to a couple of months old. So by 6 months old, there are a couple of signs that we notice when it comes to responding to smiling and facial expressions. And as they get a little older, responding to their name. Sometimes communication is a little bit delayed. And so there's a lot of different signs that could be seen earlier on. And we always like to tell parents to go and get a check. It doesn't need to be a diagnosis, but the earlier we start, the faster we could actually intervene and hopefully bridge that gap that that later on becomes more challenging for them.
Yeah. And do you find parents are receptive to, picking up these signs? Like you tell them to look out for this particular thing. Are parents able to see that, or do they have like a shield, right? It's their kid. They're not going to see that. Or from your experience, is that not the case?
I mean, yes and no. There's always this, factor of just worry initially, and some parents are newer parents, so they're not necessarily inclined to really know what the signs are. But we also, in our society, we have a lot of parents who are saying that, oh, my husband was a late talker, or I was a late walker, and I really like things to be organized, or I only had specific interests. And so they put these kind of like reasonings to delay a little bit when it comes to intervention and seeking help. So we have parents who are very hyper vigilant and, on top of it, in the sense of like they worry about every small thing. And then you have parents who, might delay a little bit. It's a bag toss when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, for sure. My youngest brother actually is on the spectrum. And in the beginning, it was his mother who figured it out, because they were noticing that he walked on tiptoes a lot. He would slam doors, never close them. He was very late in developing speech. He would just kind of scream instead of talking. And they took him to a place where he could kind of get help, and they would analyze his behavior and give him some things. And after a while, he started talking normally. He closed doors normally, but they were able to diagnose that he was on the spectrum. But if it wasn't for the help that he got, he would have been suffering a lot, I think, especially in the school system and amongst other things. But I know that my dad was very much in denial about it. It's something he didn't want to accept about his son, because I think, especially in society, there's this stigma around autism and a lot of issues people might have about this stuff, or a lot of, spectral behaviors.
Right.
So what would you say is like the biggest misconception people have about these kind of things?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of misconceptions. I have parents come and say, every time you say the word autism, you smile, and for them, it's something that brings them down. And I think society makes it seem like it's something that they should either be ashamed of, or it's like a death sentence in that sense. But I think one of the largest misconceptions that I hear all the time is that people who are on the spectrum don't like being with other people, or they like being alone. And that's definitely not the case. So autism is classified as a social communication disorder. So that means that they don't know how to communicate. And when you're able to intervene and teach them certain skills, and also teach parents and teach other people how to interact. So I believe in a two-way system. Like inclusivity should be both ways. You would really see this improvement in their behaviors. And so I think that's the largest misconception. They can't make friends, they can't go to college, they can't, get married. Like there's so many, misconceptions that are out there. And quite frankly, a lot of them are not true, or they're not necessarily, comprehensive of everyone, right? Some kids might have more challenges than others, but it's not a blanket statement.
Yeah, I think that's where the difficulty lies, especially as someone in your position, is that autism is, like I said, it's a spectrum. Like it's not all cases are the similar. Each and every case is so different. so you can't, say something about this case that belongs to this case. That's why there's a lot of conception. There's a lot of different, information about this field. Parents don't know. They're reading something that belongs to a different case. They think it applies to their case,
Yeah.
which is why there's the root of the problem is there.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask you, when treating these patients, when treating and dealing with these kids, like, what is the best approach? Is it talking to the children specifically, or to their families, or to their parents, or involving all of them in the process? Like, how do you usually approach this?
Yeah. So when it comes to ABA, and what's really interesting about the field of applied behavior analysis is that we focus on behaviors and human behaviors. And so we're able to then tailor our intervention to each child. But the beauty about behavior is it's human behavior. So we're all really the same in our core. And once we understand why things are happening, we are able to then intervene. So it's definitely, it takes a village kind of approach. We work with children, and so we have external observable and measurable goals that we have. So we are able to set goals that we are working on, similar to like a curriculum that you would see in schools. Parent education is something that's really important. There's no point in teaching a child how to communicate in a way that the parents aren't understanding, or the school, or so we even do community work. We go with the parents to the mall or the jam'iyya. We do field trips, we do home sessions, we go into schools. So we're really there for anything that the child would need to help bridge those gaps and really have a more complete approach. And then there's this other part where it's educating our community and our society. And this is why psychoeducation is also something that I'm very keen about and passionate about.
What would you say psychoeducation is?
So educating the community, opening up spaces for dialogue. So in our organization, we have a lot of events that we do that, and yesterday we had our movie night where we watch movies related to autism or other disabilities, and we have a dialogue, a discussion. I have parent hangouts where I'm like, come have a conversation and have coffee. Creating larger campaigns and events, and creating spaces and talking to communities about what an inclusive space would look like, not just because of autism, but because this is a shared community, right? There are so many people who are different, diagnosis or not, and our community should be supportive in that sense, and it's not just the parents, right? Because the parents go to Zwara, they live in the family house, they go to the mall, or their child is having a meltdown in the jam'iyya, people are judging, people don't want their kids to be playing with these kids, and so it is a social challenge. And I take it very intentionally to support parents, not only in the clinic but also by using our voice in society as well.
Yeah, I think that's the way to approach it, right? Because it's an effort from two sides.
Right.
So parents got to put their hands into the equation. It's not like, oh, let's put the therapist to it, and then we're not going to be. So I'm really happy that you're here, advocating for the role of the parent that they have to play, especially in helping children in these kind of cases. With that being said, we are going to take a very quick break. We'll come right back after this one.
And we're back from that short break. So Fajer, we were just talking about how important it is to raise community and awareness, especially with kids who are struggling with autism. And I know a big thing about it comes from the parents and their own reactions to things. Would you say that there are a lot of common mistakes that parents can make in regards to this subject? And are there ways for them to avoid it?
Yeah, I don't like phrasing, the statement of mistakes, in the sense that parents are doing their best. I think, maybe an area that could be avoided is delaying intervention and delaying help. I think we see that a lot when it comes to parents just saying, I'll wait until they're 2, I'll wait till they're 3. Maybe if I put them in this nursery, they'll socialize. And with that, I always, urge them that a consultation doesn't take that much time. We know that there's a lot of stress around that and worry, but just asking a specialist will always help get a little bit of clarity, and then that way we could intervene faster and sooner in that sense.
So would you say that early intervention is key?
It's always key.
Yeah, makes
and
sense.
not Googling.
Oh no, I think that's a big problem in
You
the
know,
world,
and-
especially with AI also.
Yes, and now with AI, it's become, parents also catastrophize, things because AI told them or because Google told them, and so a lot of the times I'm competing my experience with ChatGPT, which is a war I always lose. So, so
Yes, a lot of people I think
Yeah.
think that their AI or their own research will compete with somebody who has a degree in the field.
Yeah.
You're like, please, I know what I'm talking about. I have experience.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, very individual for each child as
Right.
well. It's not a one size fits all situation.
Yeah.
I think that's a big issue a lot of people have.
It is, and I know that issue firsthand because my mom is a doctor as well, and nothing annoys her more than when a patient walks in and they're like, "This is my diagnosis. This is what I have."
Yeah.
She's like, "No, put your phone down. Let me talk to you." I'd imagine it's the same thing. Parents walk into the office with you and they're like, "Well, this one says my children has this and
Right.
that." It's like, okay, let me deal with the child itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a problem you face a lot during these days, especially like as we just mentioned AI, the influence of AI?
Yeah, I think it's always been a problem. Social media groups as well. I always joke about it because parents come to me sometimes, and my own family members sometimes do that, and they say, "Oh, we saw that like if you eat figs and drink milk, you'll cure autism," or "I read that if you do this," and I'm like, "Listen, if it's healthy and there's no harm, cool, go for it." But there are a lot more serious methods that people claim to do that could actually cause a little more harm to the child, and so this is always a challenge, and you try again to just educate the parents, but um there's only so much that we could do. So earlier in my career, I knew that that was something that really affected me. Now I try to use my platform, I try to use my research based knowledge, but there's always some parents that are like, "Oh, I'm gonna go try this natural thing in China," and you have to let things be sometimes, and eventually they come back.
How do you deal with parents, though, who, I guess, reject your diagnosis? They don't want to believe their kids have autism.
So I always start and meet parents where they are. So if we're not ready for a diagnosis, we're not diagnosing. If they're not ready to commit to 5 days a week, then we'll start with 3, and we can work on gaining their trust. Because again, I am a stranger. This is their child, and so I always meet them where they are. I give them my phone number. I say you can talk to me. And we'll work together towards a place where you're more comfortable. And when you're ready, then I can make recommendations on where to go to get a diagnosis. And by creating that trust, they feel like they have a partner rather than this external person that knows nothing about them and their history, that's trying to, tell them what to do and how often they need to do certain things.
And is autism, and especially dealing with it from the patient side of thing and the parent side of thing, is it a lifelong process, or once they get better at it, once they improve their social habits, they can manage it by themselves, or do they need really extensive look throughout their lives by the parents and everything?
So it really depends on the child. It depends on the diagnosis. I think for parents, it's always going to be something that they're worried with. Every milestone that we hit, there's another one that they need to catch up to. And so it is an ongoing process. We're there throughout the entire process. Sometimes, kids are independent and they get into school, and we might need to catch up sometimes, but they're able to flourish fully. And there are times where it is a little bit more intensive. It is a little bit more long term, and it will require a lot more effort. But I think you get easier at it, for
Yeah.
both the patient, the parent, and for us as well.
That does make a lot of sense. And I've kind of seen that myself with people I know. Like, I know someone whose kid had very clearly something up with them, that they were not being able to do things in a normal manner. They were struggling a lot. And then they got an autism diagnosis and they went for help. But then the parent thought, oh, look, now they can do these things, they're cured. Now they don't have autism anymore. And it's just not how it works.
Yeah.
It is like a lifelong thing, I think, and it depends on the severity. Whereas I know some people who, they kept up with their children, they made space for them in that way. And their kids, mashallah, they're going to like university now, they're doing really well, and they're living normal lives.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important, as you said, to kind of spread awareness about this,
Yeah.
because there's nothing wrong with a kid when they have autism. It's just how they're dealing with life. It's their own not habits, but their own experience of the world.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make them any different than other people. It's just they need some other tools to help them kind of become their best selves, or to deal with, especially I think, sensory issues and things like that.
And it's definitely a matter of like adaptability, right? So you know, again, it's important to get a diagnosis so that you can understand the path that you're on. But the diagnosis isn't everything, right? It's not your whole life. It doesn't consume you. It's similar to knowing, you know, if you have a cold or if you're pre-diabetic, or, you know, and I think it just becomes this part of your life. It gives you an understanding and of how you operate, and with time you can, you know, live with it and just know, okay, maybe I need a little bit more sleep. Maybe I don't like going to the mall on a Friday at 3 p.m. because there's too many people there, and you can definitely adapt, you know, to it based on that.
Yeah, and is there because I know you mentioned that the sooner, you know, it's better than later when it comes to taking the kids and everything, but is there a too late kind of option? There's a point of no return where a patient now has grown way too old for these symptoms, these behavioral, you know, behaviors to be changed, or is that not in the equation at all?
So the longer we wait, the harder it is, right? It's like any habit. So, you know, I give the example of like if you smoked for 10 days and want to quit versus if you smoked for 10 years and want to quit, right? So when we're looking at behaviors, the longer that you've engaged in a behavior, the harder it is for you to change that behavior. However, it's not too late, right? It can still be done with the proper support. We are able to work on it, but it really depends on the behavior. It depends on the skill that we're talking about. So whether it's aggressive behaviors or whether it's vocalization, because there is, you know, a neurological aspect to it as well, and developmental aspect as well as behavioral. When it comes to, for example, speech and their ability to communicate. So if they're 15, their ability to, you know, acquire language is going to be a lot harder than someone that's 3 or 5 or even 7.
No, that does make a lot of sense. And I think it's that kind of thing where people, as they get older, they get very fixed in their ways, especially if they get to a very old age. And I know people like to say, oh, back during this time, there was no such thing as autism. But then you'll think, oh, but this person used to have their shoes in this exact order every single day and eat their meals in this exact order every single day, or do other habits that back then were overlooked as quirks, but now we know are actually symptoms of autism and could have been addressed at a much earlier age if they'd had the knowledge or the awareness about it. So I think a lot of people aren't aware that there are so many like nuances to this. It's not it's not black and white, you know? It's like there's so many different things about it.
Yeah.
So would you say, like, especially in Kuwait and I guess in the Middle East, that it's really important to raise awareness about this issue?
Definitely. I think there's still there's a lot of improvements in the past 7 to 8 years. In Kuwait, we're definitely progressing in the right direction. However, there's still a very long way to go when it comes to raising awareness, when it comes to even spaces. Like I always talk about accessibility. You know, we see that there are other countries that are creating more of accessible spaces in their community. And there's still a lot of work that needs to get done, but there's definitely a lot that has been done in the past couple of years.
And it's such an uphill battle for you physicians and doctors, because there's this movement called vaccine causes, you know, causes autism, which has gained a lot of momentum, which is wrong and all kind of things. But it has so much popularity online, and I'd imagine it always feels frustrating for you and someone in your position to have to deal with this constantly.
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of movements. The vaccine movement is one of them, I think, most prominent or common one. But there is research that disproves that, you know, and so again, there's only so much that you could do. So we always try to speak from a factual standpoint, provide research, reading material to parents, but there's always going to be different schools, and you know, all we could do is continue to educate, but there's always going to be people who buy into it or not.
Yeah, fair enough. I feel like there's only so much you can do, but I know that you are doing your best to spread the awareness throughout the country, the community. And I wanted to ask you if there was any like societal change or small difference you could make right now that you think could help kids with autism in Kuwait, what do you think it would be?
So definitely having more accessible places for people in general with autism and other sensory challenges. It's you know, it's a need. We have a lot of people who need that, parents who need those supports. We don't really have a lot of play areas that are autism friendly, malls that are autism friendly, certain systems, you know, that just help and cater to it, and a little goes a long way in making people feel more included. And so that's definitely something that I would always advocate for.
Yeah, and I think that's a great message to advocate for, and it's also a great message to wrap the conversation on, because we are running out of time. You know, to have these kids be included, right? Because I know from my experience when I was in school, a lot of the kids that now we know they were autistic, they were shunned out, right? The classroom felt like, oh, why is he like screaming? Why are they doing this and that? But now with our teachings, with the awareness that the community brought, the doctors and everything came to public, now we know the symptoms. Now we know, oh, these were just, you know, we just needed to understand them more. So I do want to thank you for dedicating your time to take such a role.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you, and I hope you manage to continue raising awareness because it's such an important subject for all the kids, I feel.
Yeah. And thank you for having me and asking such helpful and, you know, informed questions, because that's where it starts.
Well, it is really important, I think, especially this topic, because kids are everything. And I think the more help they get and the easier their life will be, especially if they have autism or other issues. And like you said earlier, intervention is key. And raising awareness helps remove that stigma that still kind of exists around this issue.
Right.
So thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
And with that, we are going to go on a quick break. And we're back from that episode. And honestly, Abdullah, I think it was so informative and so enlightening and a very important topic, because a lot of kids struggle at very young ages and there's still this stigma around autism. So being able to diagnose and help kids at a young age can really help their futures a lot.
Yeah, honestly, with today, because this is such an important topic, because now we are more aware of autism, especially because the role that people like Fajer took, right? They are illustrating how we can help children in this kind of situation.
I agree entirely. And I do think that it's so important to also have these community spaces she was talking about, because it helps both the parents and the kids to have support. And I think support is so important, because without it, the kid might not be able to find themselves as much. And it's very great to have other people who have the same issues as you, because then you kind of work through it together. And I think as kids, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Like, you know, you might feel bullied or you might feel like an outcast. So to know that there's nothing wrong with you, you just have these kind of disabilities, and the ways to kind of progress with them and overcome them, it's really important.
It is important. Very well said, Lujain. I couldn't have said it better. With that being said, that's the end of today's episode of The Untold. Until the next one, goodbye for now.
Goodbye for now, and we'll see you next time.